I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the great friends, characters, curmudgeons that I met along life, and just tell a little bit about some of their stories and how they connect with me. Out in West Omaha, off of 156th Street, south of Center, there's a big lake called Zorinsky Lake. That lake is named after Senator Edward Zorinsky, who died at age 58 while serving in the U.S. Senate. And he was a good friend of mine. I was a lobbyist for Wall Street, and I needed to connect with the senators and congressmen from Nebraska. And through Tom Kelly, who was a good friend of mine, a lawyer, he was Democratic National Committee man, I became well acquainted with the governor-to-be, and then Governor Jim Exon, who also was a senator, serving at the same time as Senator Zorinsky. When Senator Zorinsky died, as I say, in office, I was asked by his widow to be, asked the mayor to name me to a commission to name something after him. And what we chose was this Lake Zorinsky, which is a wonderful recreation spot in West Omaha. I think I've also talked a little bit about Jackson and Elmita Berkey, who are two wonderful musicians, been associated with the Mannheim Steamroller for years. They are dear, dear friends. They've done a lot of recording on their own, and we have just maintained friendship for 40-some years now. And Tom LaHood, who's an interesting person, can do just about anything. Wonderful singer, sings at a lot of funerals in Omaha, very, very well known for that. Was a publicist with the Union Pacific Railroad, has led political campaigns, repairs cars. He's a man about everything, a wonderful character, wonderful friend. To my in-laws, Erhard and Irene Finkston, farmed near Sioux City, Iowa. Wonderful people, great in-laws, couldn't ask for anything better. And she was known as the Christmas lady. Every year they would go beyond any norm in Christmas for our 4 children. I mean, our children had a Christmas like you can't believe. And she was a great big cause of it, but wonderful people. Marlene and I were invited to join the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. It's a Catholic organization, one of 2 organizations approved by the Pope. The Knights of Jerusalem go all the way back to the time of Constantine. We were able to make a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2007. And amongst our group was our pastor, Father Steve Stomux, 4 doctors, several captains of industry, a wonderful group of people. But our leader at that time was Bishop Blaise Supich, who recently has been made a cardinal in the Catholic Church. He's a cardinal of Chicago. And my acquaintance with that family goes back to my grandfather. In 1941, my grandfather befriended the cardinal's father, who also was named Blaise Supich. And I did not know that until 1977. I was in a meeting at the Hilton Hotel, and this man comes across the room and says, "Are you a Haney?" And I says, "Yes, I'm Clete Haney's son." He says, "I want you to know that your grandfather befriended me in 1941, and I have never forgotten his kindness." And he told me a little bit about it. And as I said, he was the father of, who then was a priest, Father Blaise Supich, who was the secretary to the Papal Nuncio in Washington, D.C. And since I was going into Washington, D.C. quite often, I made his acquaintance and got to know him fairly well. And before he became a bishop, he became the pastor of our church at St. Robert Bellarmine, and then became a bishop in South Dakota. So he was the bishop on our pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And that trip was one of the most wonderful things in our lifetime. Absolutely wonderful. We've never forgotten that or the people of it. And then I've gone on quite a bit about the miracle on 156th Street. That's now the nickname, if you will, that they've given to Scott Catholic High School. And this year, their annual dinner, Marlene and I made a very significant gift of a scholarship to the school, the biggest gift they have received to date. Yet from my days at Creighton Prep, I have a fond memory of the longtime principal of Prep, Father Henry Sullivan. One of my classmates, Father Val Peter, has headed up Boys Town for 20 years. Another classmate was Tom Shanahan, who became a federal judge. And I've had dear friends ever since those high school days. We remain solid friends today. I have chaired the class reunions, I think, from the first year we were out of the school, and this year we are preparing for our 65th reunion. And I would like to mention the Skinner family. Lloyd Skinner was a friend of my father's, and in later years my father was employed by Skinner Pasta Company. It served on the board of directors, and the Skinner family to the day remains friends of ours. But Mr. Skinner lived in a very large house, and when he decided to move, he offered me the house at a price that was so low it was unbelievable. But I didn't want to maintain a great big house, and suggested that he sell that to my brother Terry, which he did do. In later years, Jim Skinner bought a house and offered it to me for one of my daughters, and it was a huge house. It had to be moved off the lot that he bought because he wanted he bought 13 acres and he wanted that house removed. Unfortunately, it couldn't be removed from the neighborhood without removing trees, so we didn't get that house. But the kindness of the Skinner family is unbelievable. And then also another thing that goes back to 1957, so it's been 58 years or so that I have been the only person in Omaha who has gone to every single performance of the Omaha Press Club show. The Omaha Press Club show grew into a huge two-night party, if you will, at a place called Peony Park, now gone, and they would seat over 600 people at dinner each night and put on a stage show, and all of the performers were just amateurs, all involved in the media. It was the party of the year. It has slowed down and is much smaller in size now, as many of us have all gotten older, but I am the only person in town who went to every single session. I was in the U.S. Navy for 2 years, and I was in the Atlantic Fleet. This was at the time of the Korean War, or when it was shortly after the firing had ceased, but anyway, that was my tour of duty. And we were caught in a storm trying to come back to the United States, a major hurricane really, where because we were an ammunition ship, we had to pull out of the fleet and went into Mallorca, tied up in Mallorca, on an island right off of the coast of Spain. And because we were an ammunition ship, they made us anchor 1 mile out. And a beautiful place that we were able, Marty and I were able to go back and visit again when I was the treasurer of the Soli Deo Coram Cantorum, a singing group sponsored by Jackson and Almeda Berkey. And they were over there for a tournament. We were able to join them and then tag along and then go to Mallorca afterwards. That was a wonderful trip of a lifetime to be able to go back to that beautiful island. And I had some dear friends, Aloysius McMahon, who was a real character, grew up in an orphanage, a wonderful priest, friends of many, and he had a great saying, pray for me as I'll pray for yours, that someday we will meet again in heaven. Father Mack, a great guy. Our pastor, Father Steve Stillmonk, was our pastor at Christ the King Church, and he moved to St. Robert Bellarmine. Later we were looking for a one-story house, and we found one. It was in St. Robert, so now he's been our pastor again. And his good friend, Father Lloyd Gnurk, and I opened up St. Joseph High School, which was the predecessor of Ryan High School. Archbishop Sheen, who was a very, very dear friend, was a friend of my father's, a very dear friend of mine. God love him. And Bill Sweet, who was a CPA and a wonderful friend. One couldn't ask for a better friend than Bill Sweet. very knowledgeable about all kinds of things, about people, and always did wonderful things. And my friend Elmo Bevington, who was a beer distributor, client of mine, entrepreneur, started an organization in Colorado, a fun weekend group called the Old Gold. So yeah, I'm an old gold, there's no two ways about it. When I came back from the Navy and returned to Creighton University, because I had 2 years out for the service, a lot of the people in law school were of my age, and I made some very special friends who became excellent lawyers. And in the case of three that I can think of, we were friends from then on until their deaths. Each of the three have died. One was Jim Moylan, who came to Creighton Law School from Iowa, a wonderful guy. He married a lovely Irish lady by the name of Lila Fitzgerald from California, and when they got engaged, going to get married in California, asked me to come out and be in the wedding party. I didn't have two nickels to rub together to get to California, and I didn't do that, but we remained lifelong friends, saw each other many, many times throughout every year. And he became a lobbyist in the legislature, but he became a regent of the University of Nebraska for a period of about 18 years. He knew everybody he ever met. He could recall people and dates and occasions from mind without any hesitancy, just pull them right out, no matter how many years you went back. He was one of the most amazing minds I've ever known. Another fellow was John Miller. John married Jean Jardee. We really got acquainted when he was in law school and remained lifelong friends, did a lot of travel with him. He was the leading lawyer in the state of Nebraska. And another one was John Kelly. He also was from Iowa, came to Creighton University Law School, became an FBI agent, and died of a heart attack at age 49. But a real committed Christian. He gave all he could to everybody and to a lot of minority people. I remember when we were in school, he was working at a mortuary, taking night calls for them in return for a place to stay. And I picked him up one evening on his payday, and he said, "Would you buy me a beer tonight?" I said, "Well, of course I'd buy you a beer tonight. Why wouldn't I? But what happened to your paycheck?" Oh, he said, "There's some people a lot poorer than I am," and I went down to the grocery store and bought baskets of food, took it over to the local church and asked them to distribute them to the poorest people. So that's the kind of guy he was. Wonderful guy. Another real character that I met was Red Munnelly. Red Munnelly's name was John P. Munnelly. He owned obviously an Irish tavern in South Omaha, and he ran for the state legislature, got elected as a state senator. He got appointed as postmaster of Omaha by John Kennedy, who he met in the airport in Omaha. Kennedy was hungry and never carried any money, and so Red bought him lunch, and that friendship resulted in Red becoming the postmaster. He was also served as treasurer of the Omaha Public Power District when I worked on getting my firms secured as financial advisors to the board, and did a refinancing of a total of $600 million of bonds, saving the ratepayers millions of dollars. And then I had the opportunity to meet Dolores Hope, Bob Hope's wife, when I built Scott High School. Through the graciousness of the Archbishop, he got a $50,000 donation to the school from Bob and Dolores Hope. And later, when we had this grand Mother's Day in New York City at the Rainbow Room, Dolores Hope was there singing with Rosemary Clooney, so we got reacquainted with her. And also, Don Kingman was with us, and through Don Kingman, Marty and I met Douglas Fairbanks and his wife Vera, and had dinner and went to the theater with him quite a few times. Another interesting guy I met was Gordon McRae, who was an actor, starred in Oklahoma, a couple of other movies, and one of his movies he called one Sunday, wanted me to go to the theater with him. He had never seen it put together in the format that it ran. He saw bits and pieces. Unfortunately, I had a commitment and we could not do that. I missed out on a wonderful opportunity to do that. Dave Blackwell was a sportscaster here, and he was from Wisconsin, And he was a real character with a great sense of humor. He could see humor in all kinds of daily events. He could see humor. He emceed for over 33 years the biggest sports banquet in West Omaha, the Christ the King Parish Sports Stag, and he emceed every year. Had a red letter list of great people in sports that came as the speakers. Also, he did that same thing with the B'nai B'rith, their annual dinner, 33 years. He emceed that dinner. Popular, best and popular sports figures of the time. I also wanted to mention that on our dining room wall, framed, is a chalice cloth that was used up until the 60s to cover the chalice in the church. These were all made with gold thread. They were all sewn by nuns, and when they were so-called discarded, stopped using them, they could only be given to priests or nuns. And this was given to us by a priest by the name of Father Real, who had a parish in Brooklyn. And I met him when he was doing work on a famous guy by the name of Haney, spelled differently, who did untold charitable works in New York City. The priest then gave us this chalice cloth that we have. We're very, very fortunate to have it.